Alright guys, today I would like to talk to you about this book. Now, what is this, you might ask? Maybe this cover from the English version rings a bell. This is How to Draw Manga by Katie Coop, and today I would like to have a closer look at it together with you. To start, she was only 16 when she made this book, and it was published in 2002, as is very evident by the art style. This is a quick disclaimer. You may think that I'm going to go through this book and just call it cringe based on the quality of the art, but that's not what I'm going to do here. I just want to take a nice trip down memory lane and look at a book that inspired many kids to start drawing manga. In no way do I want to make it seem like I am making fun of her. I actually really respect her. If you had told my 16-year-old self that someone my age already published a How to Draw Manga book, I probably would have lost it. That is extremely impressive. Making a book has and still is a dream of mine, and her book had even been translated into multiple languages, so to say that this book was well received would be an understatement. Also keep in mind that this is targeted at kids. Alright, disclaimer over. If you are from the US, you might be more familiar with this book. As for me, I hadn't heard about it until I saw people on Twitter redraw Katie's art as a challenge. And of course, I had to do that too. So let's get into that. I put the original at the top of the canvas and got to sketching. Because I rarely draw men, let alone in this style, I was pretty much expecting it to look bad, but surprisingly it didn't. Right away I fell into this flow state, and I was able to finish this faster than usual. The whole thing only took me 2 hours. In this video I won't be going over how I did this, but I do so in my other videos. This also may be a good time to mention that I put a lot of effort into this video, and so I would really appreciate it if you left a like or a comment. I think this was my most complicated video yet. An interesting fact about the original drawing is that Katie Coop's editor actually flipped her image for the cover, which she didn't like. It was intended to look more like this. I'd be pissed too if that happened to me. The people behind this book also seemed a little sketchy. For example, she never got any royalties from her book, which is shocking. As a 16-year-old, she probably just didn't know any better, which is understandable. Most likely she has learned from this, and she has continued to publish books, which is nice to see. But let's just have a look at the cover I redrew, and then we will get to the main part of the video. Here's how my version turned out, and I don't think it's that bad. Like I said, I expected worse. Though I'm 4 years late to this trend, it was still fun and a good practice in terms of drawing guys. So let's look at the book. First off, as you can see, I have the German version of this book, which has an entirely different cover. However, of course, everything inside is still the same, just translated. I like the English version of the cover more, but the German one made me laugh because it kinda looks like a thought bubble here. But at the same time weirdly misplaced, like she's kicking the thought bubble or something. And here's where the book starts. Right away we're greeted with her art style, which looks very early 2000s. Like this little character that looks like he belongs on a forum. At first I actually didn't notice this, but this hand is backwards. She mentioned this in a tweet later, and I'm gonna put it in here. And that's where we get to the first drawing tutorial that actually has pretty good advice. I just think that the editor maybe should have marked the lines for clarity, since they are a little thin. So just for fun, I decided to follow this guide, and I ended up with this. Most people would say that they hate how big the eyes are, and yes, I'd say they're a little too big. But huge eyes can actually work out in a lot of cases, especially in shoujo manga, like by Mayo Sekai. I could imagine people drawing like this to evoke a feeling of nostalgia. She also gives a very good tip not to use a ruler. Then we see the inking and the color. In the coloring we can see these little darker spots, which I think is just the scanner messing up. Maybe it wasn't scanned properly or something like that, which is not her fault. She also tells the reader to sign every artwork, which is also important. Check out Crown Prince's video if you want to know why. Then we move on to chibis, or plushies, as they're called in this book. Right away I noticed that the characters have pretty big feet, which is unusual for chibis. Usually I see them drawn very small. But honestly I think that's a cool choice. The feet look like the ones on Sonic characters, or if you're a real German legend, the Diddlemaus. I'm pretty sure I just gave people massive flashbacks just by mentioning her. Now we get to the category of faces, which is easily explained by her. I would have drawn it on a ball as visual aid, but she mentions to imagine it on a ball, so that's fine too. Then there's this page showing how to draw male and female eyes, and at first I didn't notice how they were different until I saw that only the girl has eyelashes. It made me smile because it reminded me of those Disney memes and how differently they draw male and female animals. Then we get to coloring the eyes, and different ways how to draw them are shown. Like this pair showing off very feminine eyes, and I'm pretty sure she was inspired by Sailor Moon. This one is just a little different than the drawings shown before. This also threw me back majorly, because when I was in elementary school, I swear this is how I used to draw heads. Did we all collectively do this and I'm just finding this out now? Sounds strange, but just the simple oval reminded me so much of how I loved to draw with my cousin and my friends. We would spend hours copying from our how to draw manga books. Not to get too sappy, but I hope this book also brought lots of people the same joy I had when looking through how to draw manga books. And judging by the fact that her book was translated into multiple languages, it probably did, and that just makes me happy. Then we get shown the side profile, and this silly guy is drawn for the first time. We will see him again much more later, which makes me wonder if this was an OC she had. I'll even be drawing him, so stay tuned for that. But first we have a bunch of examples on how to draw noses, and they're pretty much the classic ways people still draw them today. Seems like nothing much has changed about that. This section of how to draw the hair actually has solid advice. You know, how the hair starts at the root and then should be drawn in clumps. I'm just personally not a fan of the way people drew hair in the early 2000s. Even when I saw shows like Yu-Gi-Oh! As a kid, I thought, this looks kinda weird. But it's just a very specific, edgy style this time had. You can find it a lot in Sonic 2. God, I'm scared that this video will make me come off like some kind of hater. I swear I'm not, it's just not my preference. But did you have books like this too? I for one had this book I bought at a museum, and this was pretty much my holy bible for drawing manga in elementary school. Let me know if I should do a video on it. I could also get Katie Coop's How to Draw More manga book. She has released that one a year later, and I'm kinda curious how her art changed in that span. Maybe that will be interesting as well. I'll just see how this video does in terms of likes and views. But back to this book. Next she shows facial expression, and we are met with the Sailor Moon eyes once again. There honestly isn't much to say about this part, because the advice she gives is pretty solid in my opinion. Experiment with different features, expressions, all that jazz. The body is where it gets more complicated. She explains that the body can be broken down into easier shapes, which probably helped a ton of kids. I just found the cover art a little funny because she looks like she's falling over, but that's beside the point. She introduces these simple stick figures you've probably seen in a similar way before if you've done figure drawings. She encourages the readers to experiment with them, which is good. I just maybe wished she would have suggested using references. Then she gets into more complicated parts, so I'll just skip that part. However, I must say that she does a great job at explaining very complicated things in an easy way. Then she goes over the proportions, and she mentions that she likes drawing this character a lot, which makes me think that this has to be an OC of hers for sure. I'd actually like to know the lore behind this guy. More stuff about dynamism, and then we get introduced to a dude with red bangs. Did Katie Coop predict the way e-girls dyed their hair in 2020? The last chapter covers things like hatching, textures, and color. This piece looks really cool to me and made me think about how I used to draw full illustrations on paper. Nowadays I pretty much just draw digitally because it's cheaper, but it sure was fun back in the day. In fact, I kinda miss it. Especially on these pages you can see how much fun she must have had while drawing. After that she goes into basic 1 and 2 point perspective, which is more than enough for kids. And lastly we are met with the materials section. It's straight to the point about what mediums you can use, but I saw this guy and I knew that I wanted to draw him in my chibi style, if you can call it that. In this chapter there are a few characters next to drawing utensils, which looked cool, but I liked this design the most, so let's get to drawing him before I wrap up this video. I normally don't draw chibis much, which is something I wanted to change anyway, so this drawing was going to teach me more about it as it turns out. I started by making my chibis only 2 heads tall instead of the 3 she does. I've done it like this before, so I wanted to go with that. The 2 heads method was just how I did it usually, so I stuck with that. But looking back, maybe I should have made him 3 heads tall. Not just to match it to a drawing, but also because of a lot of chibis I looked at online were 3 heads tall, and I liked that a lot more. Well, there's always a next time, and I'll definitely be drawing chibis again in the future. So don't miss out on that, and subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Everything is linked in the description along with my Patreon, which gets you early access to videos like this and other cool stuff. This design had a lot of bright colors that I usually wouldn't go for, and I did change the colors a little bit. Still, I was taught a valuable lesson. I realized that I shouldn't fear using bright colors like the green in the hair. I'll try to remember that. And with that, I'm done with this little chibi. What do you think? Did I do her character justice? Like I said earlier, I wish I knew this OC's name, but what can you do? Here are both images side to side for comparison again. And all that's left to say is that I'm happy you watched this video. It took me a long time to make. I hope everyone has a nice day, and take care!